Is school reform today enabling teachers to do what they do best?
Well, in my opinion, and then I say in my opinion, no, it doesn't. It doesn't allow them to do. I think teachers are saddled with a great number of things, issues around testing, around mandatory testing, and as well as kids, you know. And I think there has to be some other kind of way that we get back to the idea of creating and allowing children to grow and manifest their imagination and their collective and individuality within the process of learning itself. And so I don't think the teachers are allowed to do that, you know. In fact, I've talked to teachers who want to teach courses in a different way, but they're mandated to teach it in a certain way because of the requirements they have to do for testing.
Henry, do you agree with that? In New Haven, are we saddling teachers with standardized tests too much and not letting them teach to do their best?
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts on that. One is I'm a huge believer in the arts, and so Danny obviously is one of the great artists in American history. And I answer it in that way because one thing I do worry about in terms of education is that as we teach increasingly to a test, we take time away from things like the arts, music, the kinds of things that open children's minds. And so I certainly worry very much about making sure that kids have access to the arts, that kids both have access to the arts as performers, the opportunity to try to learn an instrument. I say try because my son is great at learning an instrument, and I was horrible at learning an instrument. So, but the ability to paint, the ability to write creatively, the ability to act, that all these things are essential to children's minds being open and to their learning.
So does that mean in New Haven you would lessen the reliance of standardized test scores in our policy the way we've instituted in the last couple of years?
So I believe in testing as it relates to helping figure out what individual children need, right? That testing that is lower stress and is meant to personalize the educational experience for children so that we know if they've learned what we're attempting to teach them. And I think that is an essential role for testing. We focus very heavily on testing to judge schools and teachers, but the primary role of testing has to be to figure out what's working with children and what they're learning and what they're not.
So in the Fernandez administration, would we stop? Would we no longer be judging teachers in terms of whether to keep them on the job and judging schools about whether to close them or not based on standardized test scores?
No, I think standardized tests are essential. First off, they're the law. Our standardized tests are, Connecticut has a standardized testing law. I think standardized tests are essential because it's important for parents to know whether or not their school is succeeding, right? That is, whether or not the school is actually teaching what it's obligated to teach. And that allows parents to both be advocates for their school and for the children. And it allows the city to judge whether or not the programs that we're trying are working. So I think testing absolutely has a role, but we need to figure out how testing is used much more. Testing is used as a way to make good decisions, but not in such a way that we take away things like the arts or recess, things that we know make a big difference in children's lives.
So how will they stop being high stakes tests? How will it stop being a pressure test if you can continue deciding whether to close a school and whether to fire a teacher based on a standardized test?
Well, I think, as you know, Paul, in New Haven it is not entirely based or even primarily based on a standardized test. That there's a series of elements of evaluation of a teacher which has been negotiated with the teachers' union, and the teachers' union is supportive of, that includes people being in the classroom and actually evaluating how the teacher is doing their job. It includes significant supports for that teacher so that they get the opportunity to improve. It also includes the opportunity for a neutral observer that doesn't work for the city of New Haven. One thing we need to do much better here is provide support to teachers right? So I do think it's essential that particularly younger teachers who are coming into the district, that in all schools they're getting the kind of training and staff development and ongoing mentoring that's necessary. We're starting to do that. We obviously have a new grant from the Gates Foundation to support that work. But that's got, if we're going to significantly improve our public schools, that has to start with great principals and making sure that we're recruiting and retaining the best principals in the country. But in addition, kind of the next big thing is making sure that we're providing the support that teachers need in order to do their jobs.